Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of Return to the Inner Child podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Lucy Avenecki. Welcome to the family and community. I'm blessed to be on this journey with all of you. Today on the podcast, we have a wonderful guest, Sam Carpino. Sam is a yoga teacher and educator and Reiki practitioner who infuses astrology into movement. She also facilitates and curates retreats all over the world, and she's also a DJ and practitioner of ecstatic dancing. Sam, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Let's get right into it.
Okay.
I want to know what you've been focusing on in your own practice lately. How have you been deepening your practice?
So my own practice lately has looked like a lot of meditation. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity of attending my first 10-day Vipassana. Essentially, in a nutshell, it is 10 days of daily meditation for 10 hours a day, partly group and partly self-guided. And that opened a brand new door and portal for me in my personal journey and development. That has been a practice that I've been very connected with since the beginning of 2026. Meditation has always been part of my journey, but not in this way. That's been really fun for me to explore.
Is there something that you're focusing on in your meditation practice? Is it affirmations or breath work or visualization?
For myself in my own practice, I am working on quieting the mind because it is quite active most of the time. I typically will begin my practices with focus on breath, and that helps to ground and anchor me into the present moment. Then I just allow all of those thoughts that tend to kind of swirl through my mind to eventually just surface and then dissolve, not paying any particular attention or focus. And then I just allow myself to sit, and then I will start to scan through my body, noticing any tension that I might be holding, anything that is maybe hasn't been released from the yoga class or a Reiki session. Sometimes I unintentionally or without conscious awareness accumulate energy. I do a really good job at protecting and shielding, but you just never know what could happen. Sometimes I am aware of the energy I'm holding and if it's mine or if it's someone else's. That's been a practice. And then typically when I lead meditation, whether in a class or at a retreat or any type of social setting, I will lead breath work and meditation because the breath helps us to ground and anchor. And then the visualization just helps us activate that beautiful imagination that we all have, but don't utilize quite often enough.
Speaking of imagination, I'm wondering what the inner child means to you. How would you describe it?
Good question. So the inner child to me is that playful, eccentric Sam that sometimes I keep her at bay because I need to appear more professional. As I reach my phase, I've learned that she also needs a seat in the front row of Sam's life. So allowing her out to play a little bit more. And she's with me all the time, especially when I'm being creative, when I'm in that flow state. She's really good at guiding and inserting those little puns in my yoga classes or the jokes that no one laughs at. I know that's my inner child because I'm the one giggling. To me, my inner child is that playful energy, that eccentric energy that, I've become a little bit more comfortable with expressing.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And I find too, my inner child has been manifesting as well in different ways lately. That sense of wonder and the playfulness and dance. I've been getting back into dancing. I've noticed that in my life as well. Just my inner child is coming out more. The need to be like my authentic self and not apologize for it either.
Yes.
So that's been big too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially when you're in the public eye in any capacity. It's this fine line of showing up that you have it all together, but also being your playful, messy self. And sometimes I find that that's a tricky line to teeter.
I find that when I show up as my authentic self, I'm drawing in the people who appreciate that, right? And I'm drawing in my tribe and people who align with that, right? And they appreciate that side of me. But it's been an aligning season for me. There's bravery too. Um, that's required when you're being authentic.
I agree. I agree. I think this reminds me of our conversation that we had a few weeks back. You had this beautiful flower in your hair, and I was just like, this is your inner child just expressing herself and so happy to be here. And you were just like so playful in what you were wearing, your outfits. And I think that's also an indicator of when our inner child is present too. That self-expression.
Yeah, self-expression, that's for sure. And I find that, yeah, I express myself a lot through my fashion as well. My inner child comes out in my fashion sense too. It's playful, but it's also a little bit bold, teetering that balance between playfulness, professionalism, but then also who, like yourself too. Let's stick with the topic of the inner child. How would you describe yourself as a child, right?
It's a good one. As a child, I was very expressive through art. I would sketch and doodle and draw a lot. I recall creating dresses and gowns and just drawing figures, and fashion was a thing. So that was quite funny. I would also draw a lot of like landscapes and birds. I was a very active child. I would always be outside and playing. I'm considered a millennial. So I grew up knowing the world with and without the internet. So it was this beautiful combination of my early childhood being outside and imaginative and finding ways to play in the grass and play with the grass. And then I have this memory of my adolescence and older years of integrating the internet and all of those games and how we formed connection with people online. It's nothing like what it is now, but I would say as a child, I had this beautiful paradox where my early childhood was very much like outdoors, playing games and sports and coming home when the street lights came on and riding my bike and rollerblading. I have this fond memory of the other side of the coin of being online and learning that whole world as I come into adulthood.
Yeah, you experience both worlds and being more present without technology. So you're in nature and then technology, more connectedness. You have both of those
Yeah.
experiences. How would you say you responded to life too as a child?
Well, I was or am the oldest in my family. I'm the oldest child in my family. There was 7 years when I was the only child, which was great. I didn't know it at the time, of course, but I had my aunts and my uncles and my grandparents and my parents all to myself. And then all of my, like, I have a brother, and then all of my cousins and family members started to come into the picture. The way I responded as a child was very playful for the first 7 years in those very pivotal developmental years. But also being the oldest, there is this unconscious responsibility that you bear and carry. You don't really realize that until later in life, but that also comes with certain frames of mind and the way you approach things. And I was always very organized and meticulous with things, which I now know to be in part of my astrology, but nonetheless, it's still a good trait to have. And I feel that also kind of helped weave into my adolescent and adult years how I would approach life as well. Yeah, there was this playfulness, but then this very responsible side and very like stoic side, which she's still present, very much so.
For the first 7 years. And that's such a pivotal time as well, because yeah, you're forming the essence of who you are at that time. So it's interesting that you were doing that on your own, and then after your brother came, then your cousins, you had more of a sense of duty and leadership and obligation as the oldest. You have that dichotomy, the playfulness and then the leadership and the duty side.
Yeah.
You can see that come out too in your own practice as well. very
Yeah.
disciplined, but then the playfulness comes out. What would you say made you happy as a child?
What made me happy as a child, I think, was just being around people. My parents were always around, or at least one of them was always around. My friends, I had some really close friends just over the backyard fence, which was also really fun. Being with my grandparents. One of my grandparents immigrated here from Croatia. From a very early age, I was a translator for my dad. And so my baba would speak to me in Croatian, and then I would translate everything to him in English. That was a really fun point in my childhood for me, very memorable. Again, you don't realize these things, I think, until later in life, but it's still very memorable for me. And then my nonna, she was very much the cleaner of the family thing. Anytime you call her, what are you doing? I'm cleaning. I'm doing laundry. So it's interesting what you pick up from different grandparents,
Yeah.
and they were all very much a part of my life very early on. Since I was the only one for so long, we always used to do things. We would go to like the cottage. We would camp. We would go to the fairs and all of these fun activities, go to the beach and just throw rocks and learn how to skip rocks. Stuff like that was some of my fondest childhood memories.
It's like a mix of yeah, like being with people and then like being on your own as well. Um
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I love also I grew up like that as well, like because my parents had immigrated here from Czechoslovakia. I've always felt special whenever I speak another language, our native language at home. I feel like I'm in a different world, the kind of secret world that we only understand, and it's fun.
It really is. Yeah. Yeah. And you're a sponge as a kid, right?
Yeah.
So you're constantly like picking up on words, and you are able to learn languages so much easier as a child.
Yeah, that's so true. And you're not self-conscious as well about how you sound in the
No, not
language.
at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's move on. I want to hear about your journey to becoming a yoga instructor and yoga educator as well.
In 2009, 2010, I was playing Wii with my daughter. And I remember we had this like board, and you would stand on it, and we had Wii Sports thing. One night she was in bed, and I'm standing on the Wii board, and it's like, oh, do this pose, which I didn't know was called tree pose, but it was tree pose. It shows you where you're balancing on your foot and how steady are you, how long can you hold this pose for. It monitors all of these things. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And then I was like, oh, that's fun. And then fast forward to 2011, I went to a local yoga studio here in Hamilton. My now husband, had brought me there, and he's like, I think you're really going to like this place. I think you're going to like yoga. And so we did a class together. It was hot yoga, and it was very challenging, but I enjoyed every moment of it. And at that point, it was a 1 week intro. And so we went to class, I think like 3 or 4 times that week. And I have this running joke with him that he dropped me off at the yoga studio and then left me there. He never came back. I have been immersed in the world of yoga since 2011 consistently. And for the first probably 3 to 4 years of my practice, it was solely for me. I was initially drawn to the physicality of the practice because it was a really good challenge for me. Grew up as an athlete, so that kind of brought out not the competitive side of me, but the endurance side of my physical health. I was really enjoying that. I tried out a few different yoga studios in Hamilton and in Dundas, and then started to just really enjoy the community of humans that would practice yoga. And being in the corporate world at that time, I started to notice the mental benefits of the practice. I found myself to be a little bit more calm, less reactive, more responsive. I was able to organize my thoughts and sift through the mental chatter a little bit easier and quicker. And in 2014, I decided to take my yoga teacher training. And I did that through De La Soul in Hamilton with Katie McClelland and a beautiful team of facilitators who I am still fortunate enough to be in contact with majority of them now, even so many years later. And this journey, I went in thinking that I was just going to learn the poses and come out this yoga teacher on the other side, overcome my fear of public speaking and all of that fun stuff. And really the essence of yoga teacher training is getting to know yourself. You gain access to these deeper parts of yourself, to your inner workings, to the places and spaces that maybe have been dormant or, that maybe you've ignored. This is all through, the meditation, the breath work, the subtle energies in your body, through the asana. The asana hold a special place, even though here in the West, there's a lot of emphasis on the movement and on the postures, the poses, the asana, the anatomy. There is this beautiful nugget of wisdom that is within each pose that I love to access and weave into all of my classes. It was from 2014 onwards that I really knew that this was going to be a very big part of my life. I just didn't know how at the time. And for the next, 3-4 years, I continued to maintain my corporate position. I worked with some executive level and C-suite humans of all sorts. And that was a wonderful time in my life that I think really tapped into that stoic, organized, perfectionist side of my personality. And then, I would teach classes in the evenings or on the weekends at that time that tapped me into my inner child, that like playfulness, that creativity, the curiosity of watching bodies move. And how can I be a facilitator of you having more peace and space in your mind and in your body? I do take that role very seriously. I knew in my yoga teacher training, I don't exactly remember how many hours in, but I remember sitting there and just watching the facilitators and just being like, I want to do this. As a kid, I always wanted to be a teacher, and I would probably have been a phys ed teacher and maybe English or something like that. Maybe art, who knows? But I just never found the secondary system to be fulfilling for me. I also was in a completely different headspace at that point in my life. When I began teaching, I really took the anatomy and physiology very seriously because if I'm going to be responsible for bodies moving in front of me, I want to make sure I'm moving them safely. I love weaving in the philosophy and the subtle energy and the energetic side of yoga. So that's where the spiritual and the practical for me kind of weave together really nicely. And I have this gift of being able to read a room and just knowing exactly intuitively what to deliver without allowing my thinking mind to take over and talk me out of something before I begin. So I knew in that moment in yoga teacher training when I saw this facilitator talking, I'm like, this is what I want to do. And it was in 2018 that I did my first cohort, and I had 12 wonderful women who I still keep in touch with to this day. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure to see majority of them through their journey almost over the last 10 years. And it was in 2019 that I was facilitating my second yoga teacher training course, 200 hours, while running my very first international yoga retreat. And I picked, of course, the furthest destination on the planet that I could think of. I went to Bali for the first time ever, and I led 8 women through that journey. And that was such a gift to be able to hold space for, at that time, 11 women here at home on my home soil, and then 8 women on international soil, and then weaving in all of these magical offerings and delivering something so transformational that becomes like an earmark in people's, timeline. I think that's such like a gift. So that's my yoga journey and facilitation so far up to this point.
Yeah, I love what you said too about holding the space for these women on the retreats. It's a special mark in their life and also in your life too, to be able to hold that space. It's amazing how we're connected in different ways. Mentioned that when you first started yoga and your yoga journey, it like opened you up to like having a deeper understanding of yourself. What would you say that you learned about yourself, or you started to learn more about yourself when you started the yoga journey?
I think the biggest takeaway for me was that I just wasn't allowing my full self to surface. I very much kept a lot of my, and I still do try to keep a lot of my personal life separate than my work life. Having the internet being so easily accessible to everyone, there are certain parts of my life that I do like to keep just for me. But I think just learning about how I was playing small and how I wasn't allowing my full self to be expressed, how I wasn't showing up fully for myself. I show up fully for others and I'm really good at that, but not so much at showing up for myself. And that was something that was a really big aha moment for me, of allowing that door to open, allowing people to see those parts of myself and that side of myself, that vulnerability. I know we've talked about that so many times, but vulnerability really is a superpower. It's a strength to have the courage to allow yourself to be fully seen and to be seen in different lights. And you're never going to be the hero in everyone's story. Sometimes you are the villain and sometimes you're the hero, and sometimes you're just a supporting character. I think being able to allow myself to fully surface, and it wasn't all at once. That was in that moment that I realized, how small I was playing, and that felt safe, right? So slowly over the years, I've unraveled and just allowed different parts of myself to surface and, be seen. And even in yoga classes, when I make a joke and, I think they're funny, but sometimes it doesn't land, or maybe they don't find it funny. I no longer take it personal. I'm like, well, as much as this class is for you, it's also for me, because every class I show up to, I'm cracking myself open that much more. I'm being that much more vulnerable. I'm being that much more real. And I think that was a really big piece of the puzzle for me.
Um, I like that. And what were some moments where you felt you were starting to overcome that? You started to do the opposite. Instead of shrinking yourself, you were showing more of yourself and taking up space and being more your authentic self.
I would say being in front of people really
Uh,
brings that out in you. Showing up in front of a room full of people. In the beginning phases, I was lucky. Sometimes it was like 2 to 5 people. And then it started to grow to 10 people, to 12 people. And I'm like, ooh, people are coming back and people are showing up again, And I've done a really good job at remaining humble through it all, because we're all on a journey. We're all going through and moving through something. There's been students that have been in my life since the beginning, since the inception of my career. And then there's been people who have come in for seasons. I remember early on when students stopped coming to class, I would take that very personally. That helped me overcome my own insecurities or my own shadows or obstacles within, right? Of being liked. You're not for everyone. And that's something that I continue to tell everyone that comes through the yoga school, is that sometimes you're going to resonate with people and sometimes you're not, and that's okay. You're not for everyone, and not everyone is going to like you for various reasons, because we're mirrors for everyone in our life in some capacity. Sometimes we're mirroring back to people what they're working through or what they've worked through. Or you never know why the people who come into your world are there unless they share. Right? Yes, that was a big one. Getting over that fear of using my voice. I've had some past life traumas around expression and using my voice being taken away or not being taken seriously,
mm,
or being silenced, or that quietness in my voice, or whether that past life be in this life, but it feels it was another lifetime ago, or a literal past life. Those are obstacles, and I still continue to overcome them, but I don't know I'm overcoming them until I'm in that moment. So you never know who is going to show up and trigger something within you to grow, or trigger something in you that might be positive or negative. I mean, everything has a vibration. You never know until you're in it. And then you just have to have that strength and power to face the adversity, hopefully with a smile most times, and not shrink back into that safety net. There's been a lot of overcoming obstacles just being in front of the student population.
Even myself, I would say that's one of my fears, and not my strengths is public speaking as well. And I used to work as a swim instructor, and now I'm back into that as well. The first time that I taught a class, I remember I felt really nervous, but then I got more confident as I kept going. It's a challenge to be a leader and an instructor. I think people don't realize how nervous we are too.
Best or my favorite part of training, now it's your turn to teach, or now it's your turn to lead or instruct. Like, what do you mean? But this is where we grow. It's in those really
Yeah.
uncomfortable places, and being able to share what's on your heart is never easy. Whether
Yeah.
you know it really well in your bones and in your body, or whether you're quote unquote intuitively guiding or winging it, as some may say, you're the only one that knows what's within. We have to trust that. And I think that comes in part with that inner child as well, being able to trust when she's guiding you or he's guiding you on your journey.
Finding your voice as an instructor, it takes time and a lot of courage and self-trust. You grow a lot in this experience, but it definitely pushes you outside of your comfort zone. I remember your yoga classes. The fact that you're saying too that you're nervous as an instructor to start off is amazing, because when I think back about your classes, I see someone who's so confident. I love your connection to yoga and how you lead us. It's gentle, but then also I feel very energetic. That always resonated with me when I took your classes. I always had a really good feeling coming from them.
Thank you.
Like, how did you develop your own voice as an instructor? And yeah, like, and that confidence in who you are.
Developing my own voice as an instructor definitely came with practice. And I think in the beginning, you almost emulate and mirror the teachers or the instructors that were very strong pillars in your development. And then you quickly realize that those words are not your words, and that's not how you speak, and that's not the way you deliver things. With that comes trial and error. I know in the beginning I was mirroring a lot of the instructors, and I was very fortunate. I had about really 5 really strong, fierce instructors. And then I had another probably 5 or so that I loved their energy and their playfulness. It was a matter of like finding like what I liked as a student, and then weaving that into who I am as a teacher. So there was that period of time. I picked up classes and got out of my comfort zone. And I remember the first time ever that one of my teachers outside of yoga teacher training came to my class. I was like, oh my God, what are you doing here? But then you have to remember, at the end of the day, they're human. They're just human.
Yeah.
They're students too. They like to practice, and it's always wonderful to see your teachers in practice and to see fellow teachers in practice. Like I said, you never know when the nerves are going to surface. But I would say over the years, as I would put myself in those uncomfortable situations, covering for a teacher who I looked up to and was so strong, if they went on maternity leave and I'm like, ooh, this is a permanent position, semi-permanent. It's over an extended period of time. I really have to show up here. There is a dedicated group of sometimes 20 to 30 people. And that would have been something very intimidating for me in my early years in my career. Overcoming obstacles there and just trusting that you know what you're doing. It kind of just goes back to no one knows what you know. People know what you know, but nobody knows it the way you know it. And that's where that authentic voice comes in. I was fortunate enough I've had hundreds of hours of training and extracurricular activity as a yoga teacher. I've attended yoga festivals as a vendor, and I remember having on my vision board that I one day wanted to teach at a yoga festival. And last year that came true for me. I was
Oh
at
my
the
God.
Everlove Festival that is out in Collingwood. Beautiful group of humans that run that festival. I had the opportunity of just connecting with so many beautiful souls, like hundreds of them. And, being able to really teach in my unique and authentic way. I was teaching an astro yoga class. So I taught based on like that particular day's moon, sign, phase, weaving that all in and pairing that, marrying that with yoga and breath work and asana and meditation and mindfulness, and really kind of drawing on all of this training and experience that I have gained over the years. I think that's how my authentic voice has come through, is because your 200 hours takes you into the rabbit hole, so to speak, of yoga. Kind of gives you a little sprinkle and taste of everything. And then after that, it's up to you where you take the journey. For the first few years, it was very anatomically focused. I wanted to make sure I was moving bodies safely. Then I've always been fascinated with the moon and with astrology. And so I weaved that in my own way. My newsletter, my lunar love letters are all around the moon. And that's where I share my little pieces of astro wisdom and insight. Then I would start sharing like, oh, I have a yoga event coming up. So again, that fear of being seen and that playing small was now coming to the surface. It was now being like, oh, are you sure you want to tell more people about that? Because they might come. So overcoming all of those little obstacles along the way through ways that I found expressing myself and
Yeah.
sharing my voice. And then I would say probably by year 3, I was really faced with a crossroads. I was leaving the corporate world and I had this decision to make. Do I go and find another job within the corporate sphere, or do I transition into the world of wellness? And that was a really big jump to take. And it was in those moments, in those years, that I began supporting other people who were on their yoga journey. I naturally just found myself, being like, hey, do you want me to help you? Like, one of my girlfriends was opening up her own clinic and I offered to help her through her yoga exam. And I'm like, just practice with me. I'll give you feedback. And it's just, I found my voice that way. And then in 2018, I met all of those fears again, just as I had thought I had found my voice, of like, well, who am I to create a yoga school? I've only been in this for 5 years, and who am I to do this? Then you're faced with all of those inner critics and small voices inside, or sometimes very big and loud. And then overcoming that obstacle. And then once you step into the seat of the teacher, being like, oh, I do know what I'm talking about. And these little nuggets of reassurance along the way, slowly integrating energy work and seeing how my practice was shifting from the physical into the mental, the energetic, the emotional. That was a really big transitional phase as well. And then having learned the Sui lineage of Reiki and then weaving that energetic space into yoga, I had realized I was doing it all along, but on an unconscious level, because I was doubting myself. I wasn't sure of my gifts. Every year of my journey, I've been confronted with something that has forced me or nudged me to grow in some sort of way. And it's always been around finding my voice and allowing myself to be heard.
It's amazing how at each stage in your journey, you were just getting more comfortable with your voice. The universe was like, nope, now add this to your practice.
Yeah, it's like a spiral, right? In the beginning, the spiral is really short and tight. And like there's lots of lessons being thrown at you from every direction, and you're constantly dodging and weaving and practicing your ninja skills. And then slowly the spiral begins to open up for you every time. It's like new level, new devil, right? So it's like, oh, you're comfortable now? Okay, well, we're going to challenge you a little further. We're going to see how comfortable you can be here. What does that look like now? There's always these challenges, but the more we're confident in self and in our voice and what we're delivering, then the stronger our message becomes, the more confident we become, the more we start to trust what is naturally arising rather than doubting and second guessing it into self sabotage.
I want to take a moment on some of these pit stops that you mentioned. Let's start with astrology. First of all, I love when you infuse the yoga practice with astrology because I find that there's so much wisdom and knowledge in this field. There's so much to be gained and you get so many insights. Where did your interest in astrology come from and how did you decide to incorporate that in your practice?
Yeah, great questions. My interest in astrology, I think that comes from my mother. She always read horoscopes. And so anytime there was a newspaper or a magazine, I would always read horoscopes of everyone's sun sign, which is your birthday. If I know your birthday and I know you fall in this window and, ooh, you're a Pisces or an Aquarius, I would always read their horoscopes. And sometimes they would be bang on. And then other times I'm like, it's not really me or them right now. I took my studies further probably only about 7 years ago, 6, 7 years ago. Everything up to that point was just all self taught, just purely based on whatever I was into. I've always gazed at the stars and drew the constellations from towel on the beach or the dock at the cottage. And I would always just stare up in the sky, just knowing that we are part of so much more than what we actually know of. And I always felt this calling that that somehow either my family was up there, my real family was up there. This is just my human family. But that's very Aquarian of my brain to be like, no, 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 I'm from there. And then I've always been fascinated with the moon, always. And then so then I started following the moon phases and then I would track it with my own cycle and noticing these fluctuations of emotions. First, my studies always begin with myself and then I start to branch out. So usually it's my closest friends and family and then it branches out further and further down the chain. But I'll start to notice these larger currents of, oh, that is very Gemini of you, or oh, that is the moon influencing everyone. Everybody always says it must be a full moon. Well, it makes sense because energy is always at its peak at a full moon, right? It's like the top of the mountain. We've climbed to the peak. And then from there, everybody's mood starts to lower. I started to notice that in yoga classes. I would be leading a very vigorous flow, for example, and I was noticing a lot of people struggling to keep up. I started to draw the parallels pretty early in my career, again, around finding my authentic voice and expression. I just started to play a little bit. What would happen if I created a class around this moon phase? Would people notice? What would the response be like? At first, it was purely physical, and I would just share a theme. If it was a full moon, for example, and energy is at its peak, I would pick invigorating words to weave in through that practice that would tie into the poses that we were doing or to the breath work that we were doing or the state of mind that we were in. And then I started tying in the zodiac sign. And then I started tying in the degree that the moon was in. I started to just continue to hone down and keep going even more minute. I started to notice that the student population was responding really well to this type of, we'll call it sequencing. And so then I just started to just play a little bit more. And then I created classes around the sun season, which is that 30-day period when the sun is in Aries, for example, as it is right now, or when the sun is in Aquarius, that's Aquarius season. I would create classes around very mentally stimulating things because it's an air sign, or I would hop into the opposite sign of Leo and create some very fiery things around the moon phase and energy building. A lot of the times, if I'm ever at a loss of what to do or where to go, I will typically look to the moon and be like, that's why I'm being drawn to the hips, because we're in a Sag moon phase. We have this ability to move through all 12 zodiac signs in Western astrology in the period of a month, right? In 28 days. So every 2.5 days, the moon changes phases and signs. I teach daily, but that theme can carry on and fluctuate. And I am very much a creature of change and transformation. I've been many people in this lifetime. I've been many versions of myself in this lifetime. And I feel like my classes are often a reflection of that as well. The poses may be the same, but no class is really ever the same. That's just one of my signature things that I've adopted is I've tried to repeat sequences or classes and it just never turns out, even if I try real hard. I think that's just also part of who I am and my authentic voice coming through in that this is one of my unique offerings. That's kind of how I started to play and dabble. Now it's just fun to create these classes. I teach a lot of them on Insight Timer, Astro Yoga classes around particular moon phases, or it just be a lunar flow class. And then that day, whoever shows up, if the moon is in Scorpio and it's waning, then that's the theme of that class. And then I pull on my astrological knowledge and then weave that into a yoga class. And then that kind of becomes the guiding force, if you will.
Oh, I love that. You've also embodied the essence of the moon too, as an instructor, right? That it's always changing. So you mentioned that you had a decision to live it in your career from corporate to then go right into wellness. How did you make that decision, and were ultimately deciding factors for you?
Well, I had a lot of support at home. My husband and my daughter were very supportive of this decision. They were very encouraging. They were willing to offer helping hands for trade show setups, or my daughter would typically be with me behind the table. We did spiritual jewelry to attract people to the table, like gemstones, and then weaving that in with astrology and then sharing like any like yoga classes I had coming up. That was like a really big thing, was like a lot of like being out in the public and putting myself out there. That was really uncomfortable, but that helped me grow. And the decision just really came down to what made me happy. And coming home in a foul mood or state more often than I probably care to admit was, not good at certain times at home. And I'm able to turn on and turn off, but sometimes it was more challenging because you bring that work stress home. And I always tried my best to leave work at work, but sometimes that just didn't happen. And now my work is literally everywhere. Now I'm in my work, of my work, but in a completely different way because it makes me so happy what I do. I think finding that passion and finding that drive and that inner happiness was a big piece of the puzzle. And then over the years, it's just been trusting that voice and continuing on that journey. And it's a very interesting industry to be a part of. It has changed so much over the years. I love being in the community. Being part of clinics and studios has always been a keystone for me because I love meeting new people. And I think that's where the nervousness would come in even up to this day as a teacher, because now even when you were one of my students and we had these really beautiful intimate classes, you're all new to me. That's a learning curve. Once we start to get to know each other, and because it was such an intimate group and you're all very keen on sharing and interacting, which is also an obstacle to overcome as a teacher. Because in most group classes, there's not a lot of interaction. I think that's why sometimes when I make a joke, people don't laugh. It's just like, are we allowed to laugh? It's yoga. Like, don't take us so seriously.
That's true.
We're here to better ourselves. Let that joy flow through you. But that's where that fear would kind of creep in again. And it's just that unfamiliarity. But that's also the places where we grow the most. It's the same. If I get someone on the Reiki table who has had previous Reiki treatments, or maybe they're a practitioner, there's always that immediate, you kind of like, you're like, ooh, okay, didn't know that was still in me. But then you're like, no, you settle into your gifts. You're like, this is what I have to offer.
Yeah.
If you're a Reiki practitioner and I'm a Reiki practitioner, we've learned the same methodology, but what we deliver is not going to be the same because we're not the same. It's just coming back to remind myself of these things, whether I'm in yoga, in astrology, or in Reiki, whether I'm leading a retreat or yoga teacher training. It's never to compare, because comparison is the thief of joy. but it
Well,
also helps us grow. If you compare yourself to someone you look up to, then that can maybe help you strive to be at that level. It doesn't always have to be a negative. Just knowing I had the support to make those really big decisions and then allowing myself to like trust that I can do the things to make the big decisions work.
you really need people in your corner, the support. And it's humbling to hear too, from your perspective, even someone who's so experienced and like skilled as you are, you're still nervous too. That's humbling to hear that.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're all humans, right? We're energetic beings having a human experience, and the
Yeah.
humanness of it all kind of just throws this curveball to the
Does
whole
come
equation.
in. You could be doing something so many times, but
Yeah.
then, you do something with one person and you're like, oh, I get nervous
Yeah.
again.
If you're still getting nervous when you're doing things, it means you're in the right place
I
because you're
think
being
so.
challenged in all the right ways. Those little reminders are okay.
It's a good way of looking at it, yeah. If you're still getting nervous, that's a good spot to be in.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
growth period.
And
For sure.
everybody that's in front of us is our teacher just as much as we are theirs.
Yeah.
Whether you're a swim instructor or yoga instructor, everybody is our teacher too. We
Yeah.
don't know all the things because we don't know all the different mechanics of the bodies and what's going on inside
Yeah.
the inner workings of the mind. We're always learning as well as teachers.
I want to ask you also about Reiki and how you got into the energetic aspect of your practice. Reiki is such an amazing experience as well. The first time that I did Reiki was with you as well. That was such a pivotal moment for me. How did you get into the Reiki?
I find that Reiki is something that kind of finds you. Um, I was I was introduced to Reiki and energy work uh, pretty early on in my yoga journey, we'll say, but I didn't really know that it was energy work and Reiki. And then I slowly started to meet more and more people who did energy work. And then I started to dabble. I had an Akashic Records reading by someone, which is energy work that deals with your past lives and how that carries on into this life. And then I had a Reiki session by a practitioner who was doing Reiki, but weaving it in with her other gifts. And it wasn't called Reiki. At that time, I didn't know it was just Reiki. And then it just dissolved for a little while. It was very physical, I had mentioned in that one little block of time. I think I needed that in order to build a foundation in my mind and in my body and then in the student population. And then I came back to it because a friend of mine said, I think you should meet this Reiki practitioner. I think you would get along swimmingly, and she's a wonderful human. I am always down for a good referral. I love meeting new people and experiencing new things. And she called her practice Reiki. So I went to her for a session. And then very shortly after, I booked myself in for her Reiki 1 training. And then I received that. And for then 3 years, I only practiced Reiki on myself. And I did that every day for 3 years. And I think that was a very transformative piece in my own puzzle, like mentally, physically, energetically, emotionally, spiritually. It opened up different doors for me. It opened up different gifts and it solidified some of those gifts. A lot of them I had doubt around for the majority of my life, but I know we are all very energetic psychic beings, and that has been dimmed and dumbed down over the years. I think it's wonderful that we have an education system, but that also takes away from our creativity and our imagination. I know as a child, so I've always been a very vivid dreamer, but I remember this as a child as well, being very vivid in my dreams and then telling my parents about my dreams and then being like, how do you remember this? And that doesn't sound like a dream. Like hearing this feedback, and I still get the same feedback now. Anytime I share dreams, it's like, how do you remember this? But no dream is ever what it seems. It's always a very layered onion, if you
Yeah.
will. Just kind of like have to peel it back to get to the core essence of its meaning. It started with interpreting my dreams a little bit more, taking a dream journal, reading into what I thought the signs meant, and then actually doing research on what they meant, and then seeing parallels, and then just strengthening intuition. Even up to this day, there are still moments where I don't listen to my intuition, and then I'm like, should have listened to my intuition,
Right.
But I would say with that 3 solid year period of self-practice and connecting with myself in that way, it became a form of self-care, self-love, and then energetic alignment. At the end of that 3 year mark, I decided to take my level 2 training. And I did that with a girlfriend of mine, which I think was so lovely because it was just the two of us and we both still exchange up to this day. And it's so magical because you create or remember these energetic bonds that you have. Then I started sharing it a little bit more confidently and getting out into the community with it. And then again, figuring out ways to promote that I do energy work. And it's still sometimes very baffling and puzzling because it's hard to explain at times what energy work really is and what Reiki is, because for me, it's one of those experiential things. We need to feel it and experience it in our body and have this deep trust that it's what we need and then kind of grow from there. But essentially, the way I look at energy work and Reiki is just remembering again that we are those energetic beings. This is just our meat suit. This is our vessel in this lifetime. And this is temporary, but our energy, which is what we are made of, that is not temporary. That is infinite. That is so big. If we look at energy work, how we look at massage, for example, massage or yoga is very physical. It's tangible. You can feel, you can see the difference, the changes, where energy work is subtle. Sometimes I've had people come onto the table and be like, this is my first time. I have no idea what to expect. And then they leave being like, well, I feel clear. I feel calm. I didn't know I even had the potential to feel this way, but that's energy work. So massage is your physical body being rubbed, where Reiki is your energetic body being wrung out. And I think it is so rewarding on so many levels to be sharing this practice as well.
Yeah, I find it is hard to explain to other people as well. It attracts a certain kind of person, right? Who's already like spiritually aware, I find.
Yes. Exactly. There's a spiritual awareness. There's an energetic awareness.
Yeah.
I've had people in my life for years and know that I've been doing this for almost a decade and still be like, I can't slow down. I can't be still. I can't just lay there for 45 or 60 minutes. And I'm like, but that's actually what you need. Your nervous system is shot and you're at the point of exhaustion or burnout. And this is really what you need right now. You need energy work. You don't need anything more physical. You don't need to be lifting more weights or practicing more yoga. You need to slow down. And a lot of people don't want to be in their own mind or in their own body. That's scary. That's why a lot of people don't meditate. It's the same with energy work. You nailed it. It does take a spiritually aware person and one who is energetically attuned as well, like to know I need something else.
I think some people are not aware yet that they are energy, right? That they are spiritual beings. It's a big leap for them. That's the thing with the spiritual awakening, right? Is that again, like it chooses you, and it happens randomly as well. It's not something that you can force as well.
Because yoga unearths things in a different way. When we start to move our body on a physical level, we free up energy that's been stored in our joints and in our bones and our tissues. And then when we come to energy work, now we're clearing the pathways. We're clearing more of that debris, more of that space that we've already churned up.
I wonder how you would say like the inner child intersects between all of these different practices. How does the inner child manifest in astrology and Reiki for you?
The inner child will manifest in astrology through my curiosity. She loves to learn and gain more knowledge. In Reiki and energy work, she is reminding me of just how powerful we really are. These are your gifts. We've always had them. Yay! It's time that you play with them and be confident in them. She's my cheerleader when it comes to Reiki because it's the hardest thing for me to kind of throw out there and promote, because again, it's something where you're called to, it's something very experiential. You have to be willing to rest and slow down.
I'm always interested in how people can like to awaken. I want to know like what was your like latest spiritual awakening and what was that like for you?
So my latest one would definitely have been in February at the Vipassana. That was my birthday gift to myself. So very last day of my 10-day journey was the day where we broke our silence. It was half a day of silence and then the other half a day of starting to use your voice again. And that awakening for me was again reassurance and trusting my gifts and my intuition, because when you can't speak or connect with the outer world or voice your opinion or teach or share or help, you are left to yourself. And that is it. I did this journey for two reasons. One, because I knew it was going to be as transformational, if not more, than my yoga teacher training journey, which
Yeah.
was 200 hours. And this was 110 hours. And then the other reason is because I just wanted to do this for myself. Like no one else, everyone else will benefit from it because I'm working on myself, but I wanted to do this for myself. And that I would say was just such a gift in and of itself. And the awakening that comes when you are quiet, when you hand in your phone, you have no contact with the outside world for 10 days. It takes a toll on you. You don't realize how connected to your devices that you are,
Yeah.
how often you seek external, whether it's validation, gratification, guidance. In those moments, all you have is yourself. There were a few times I was presented with an obstacle and I had to walk away. I went for a walk. It happened to be in a moment where there was a window of time that was free time. You could choose to walk the grounds or rest. And I chose to walk. And then all of a sudden tears just came streaming down my face. And I had to be like, okay, but why am I crying? What is this energy trying to tell me? Well, in this moment, this would be when you would typically call a family member or a friend and vent, and you have none of that but yourself. So who are you going to talk to in this moment? You work it out with yourself. And that is, I mean, I like to think I'm a very strong person. I like to think that I have my ducks in a row, so to speak, but I do have a sounding board. And in those moments when you're confronted with these obstacles and you don't have that sounding board, you only have yourself. And it's like, well, I guess whatever decision I make right now, that is the decision that is right for me. And how often in life do we allow ourselves to go there? How often do we consult ourselves first before trying to offload that onto someone else? Post Vipassana, having integrated back into real life and bring all of those gifts into this world now, I think that's where the real work is,
Yeah.
because I've wanted to go back to the forest so many times. I do. It's different now. Having those gifts brought through into real life, or those moments where I intuitively knew something was wrong, but I had no way to communicate it, or I intuitively knew through a dream that something was validated and I had no way to communicate it. You're not even allowed to journal. So I'm trying to remember all of these things and trust that whatever is meant to stick and to be shared, it will come
Yeah.
through.
Wow.
That I think was such a gift. And once I was back in the real world and once I was able to share what I integrated, it was just priceless. It's those moments where I'm faced with adversity here in real life. And instead of picking up my phone and calling someone or going upstairs or downstairs and talking to someone or whatever I may have done in the past, I now sit, I allow myself to feel for a moment and then work through what am I actually being shown right now? And then realize that like by me sharing this with someone else, it is not going to help them in any way. It is not going to help me in any way, because now I'm going to take your thoughts into consideration. And as much as they matter in this moment, that's not what matters. I need to figure out why I feel the way that I do so that I can move forward, learn and grow from this and then move on. And this is all part of like those spiritual awakenings and development that we face. Sometimes for people, it'll come through yoga, through Reiki, through a really solid astrology reading, through a retreat, maybe even through ecstatic dance. We don't know when these little awakenings are going to come through. Sometimes they're small and tiny. And then other times they're really big and grand, and you are feeling completely broken open and shattered into pieces, only to be put back together again, like Kitsugi with the gold lining. It's this beautiful piece of artwork. And really, that's what we are. We've been broken down so many times and put together better and greater for our highest purpose. There's some gold lining in there. This is where we've been hurt. This is where we've had to piece our life back together. What about you? When was your last spiritual awakening?
Oh man, I think the last big one happened last year in October. I got out of a relationship and I knew that we weren't in alignment for a little while. And I remember like I was so fearful at the time leading up to that decision. But then I just kept getting the message from God, the universe, that don't worry, there's gonna be so many opportunities coming from this. I trusted in that vision, and I also knew I didn't want to be half-hearted in something, right? I wanted to be full body yes with someone, right? So I said, okay, I have to do this. And the moment I decided, I already I felt a big weight come off from me. I didn't realize how stressed I was too with that decision leading up to it. After I ended things, the weight was lifted and I felt I could breathe again. And even my parents and my brothers said right away, you sound better. I felt myself coming back to myself. I felt more alive.
Amazing.
And that was when I came back to dance too. Oh my gosh, dance. I feel it saved me in that sense as well. I think that it's been my therapy. It's been healing me for the first time in my life as well. I feel sexy, which is
That's a
so
superpower.
that's big for
Yes.
me.
Yes.
So that was huge. It was from that realization that okay, I really need to pour back into myself because I felt that I was pouring into others and I really neglected myself actually. When I realized, okay, I need to come back to myself. That was the healing experience. Actually, this thing that I was so scared of, it has cracked me open, awakened my dark femininity, I would say. And at the time, I didn't realize what it was. I didn't have the vocabulary for it, but that's what was happening. I just realized that recently that that's what it was called, the dark femininity. Dance has made me feel more connected with my body. I'm also more connected with my fashion and taking more risks there. I have stronger boundaries too. You're connected more to sensuality as well. And the realization that actually, yeah, I'm desirable, I'm magnetic, mysterious, and I've been tapping into that energy. That's been my latest awakening is
That's powerful.
yeah, is realizing there were so many things that I suppressed. And now it's finally time to integrate all of those. It's been a journey and I'm still on this journey. I'm still doing the integration work. But it happened almost immediately, right after I ended things. I needed to do that.
Connect with yourself in that way.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I didn't see myself at all that way. And I know that the universe was guiding me because I kept getting the message, right? That no, you're safe to do this. There's gonna be so much
That's
growth.
such a big one.
It was a hard decision, but yeah, I mean, it's been a blessing ever since. The relationship itself was a blessing too, and that's what I needed at the time. I think that it wouldn't have sparked this evolution in myself as well if I didn't, if I didn't experience all this. So, so that's where I'm at.
You're dancing with your divine. feminine. Nor am I.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I've always been connected to the light femininity of like nurturing, caring, compassionate, right? I think many people would describe me that way, um, but yeah, I haven't been. I always suppressed that part of my confidence. Growing up, there were some girls who just spoke what was on their mind. And I remember I looked at that and it was like, I wish I could do that, but that's not me. And now I feel more like, no, actually, I can do that.
But you could do it with kindness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's the difference.
That is the big thing. That's so true. Because at one point I was a little bit rogue. I need more nuance here where I need to convey this. I need to convey this with kindness.
Perfect. It's a good place to be.
Yeah, so that's been my journey there, but now it's been a blessing. I love dance. But and I've learned so much from dance too. Like so yeah, that's my latest spiritual awakening.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. Your listeners, thank you for sharing.
It's a healing journey. Oh my gosh. Just realizing that I don't need to suppress this part of me. And speaking of dance, let's get into the ecstatic dancing. And your journey too as a DJ. An ecstatic dance. When you told me what that was, I was like, wow.
It's ecstatic dance. I was introduced to it probably about 10 years ago, if not a little bit more. Back in the day, I had my own yoga studio and we had brought in this amazing collective of DJs, dancers, sound bath healers, all the whole kit and caboodle. They were amazing. And they still put on very epic ecstatic dance events to this day. They're Chocolate Groove, and I just absolutely love them. They're great. They've had some stellar DJs come through their lineup. Check them out. They do a lot of events in Toronto, KW. Sometimes they'll pop up in Hamilton. But I had brought them in to our studio at the time because one of the yoga teachers that was on the roster was really close with them. And they're like, Sam, we need to bring in ecstatic dance. And I was like, I trust you. I don't know what ecstatic dance is. They're like, you're going to love it. And I do love to dance. But at that moment in time, up till that moment in time, I always needed liquid courage to dance. We said yes. And we said we were going to do ecstatic dances. I had told my business partner, this will be my responsibility. I'll be the ones at the event until from beginning to end. The very first time I was on the dance floor, I was very stiff and not really allowing the music to move me. And I was still very much like, what are people thinking? Nobody cares. Like, nobody cares. Let that go, Sam. Eventually, I was like, wow, the way people are moving here, really nobody cares. And that's what ecstatic dance is it's this expression, this self-expression of just allowing the music to move you. Unapologetically, freely expressing who you truly are through dance. It's not choreographed. It is sometimes not even dance. It's just a static movement. And this rhythm that starts to move your body, you start to feel ecstatic. You vibrate, your hands tingle, your heart beats. You really just let yourself out of your shell. And I think that's the biggest piece of the puzzle is to just free yourself from the shackles that bind you in all the ways you didn't know you were being held back. And after that first event, I was like, let's bring it back. We brought it back, I think 3 or 4 more times through the studio. And every time I just loosened up more and more and more. Then I started going to my own ecstatic dance event. I would go and find them all over. Didn't matter where I was. I've been to ecstatic dance events in Indonesia and in Toronto, and they're great. I love them. They're so much fun, even in the city here. And I was at breakfast with Katie, and she was like, I was telling her how we were both going to see this one DJ that we liked, and we were just like, we're just going to go and dance our face off. We're not drinking. We're not doing any other substances to make us come into this state of awareness. We were talking about how we can just get there through this DJ's music. And then she's like, you should just DJ. She's like, you already come up with really good playlist. I was like, yeah, like I love to DJ. So I took on the challenge and I taught myself how to DJ. I gave myself a 3-month period to learn. And then 2024 through 2025, we hosted events at the Hamilton studio. We had people from all over come out to dance and move their bodies. We would open up in a ceremony in a circle where you have a moment to look and see who is in the space with you. Because then once you're on the dance floor, it doesn't matter. You're there for yourself. You can dance with other people, but only with consent. There's no touching others. It's more just about yourself, which I feel has been the like nucleus of this podcast episode is just like reconnecting with yourself. Those moments were so fun. As much as I love being on the dance floor, it is even more fun for me to be behind the DJ booth and on the decks spinning live. I never record a set. Everything is always just live. I have my set list, but everything is just in the moment, just watching and being responsible for, again, moving bodies, but in this way, it just fills my heart to a whole other level. I've always enjoyed music and it always has held a really special place in my heart. And I've been very fortunate to have people in my life who have been pivotal in the music industry in some sort of way. Anytime I have questions, they're always willing to answer. It was a very potent, magical moment in time. We'll put on another Ecstatic event sometime in 2026 to be determined. Right now, my focus is on my next yoga retreat, but very soon we will shift focus and gears back to ecstatic dance. It is so connected to my inner child that she gets to come out and play because I spin to tribal house, melodic house. The lyrics that are present are very affirmative. They're very mantra-like, if not even a mantra. But to the best of my ability, I try to stay away from the lyrics of the songs because, I mean, if you listen to the lyrics of most songs, it's not affirmative. It's not for anyone's highest and greatest good. It's a lot of just letting the drums move your hips, letting the cymbals and the horns and the flute let you feel light and airy, opening up your heart, that kind of stuff. So I absolutely love ecstatic dance for that reason because every DJ brings their own flair, their own style. No ecstatic dance is ever the same. Just like yoga, when you go to a yoga class and you practice with one teacher and then another teacher, everybody knows the same thing, but they're never the same. And I absolutely love that about music. It just elicits something in so many people. And then being able to share and express that is such a gift.
What's the energy like at these events? And what's the vibe that you're feeling in the room when you're DJing or when you're participating as a dancer?
I feel they're different. So when I'm participating, then I am just this 8-year-old Sam or 5-year-old Sam that just is dancing in her living room, doesn't care what she looks like. She's doing fist pumps and knee bumps and all of the weird things that she did as a child. And then also with certain beats, just letting them flow through her. Sometimes my eyes are open, sometimes my eyes are closed. That's the fun part about participating in them because I just allow myself to let go and be free. And then when I'm a DJ at Ecstatic Dance, I tend to host these events around the season changes. We're playing into what that season is like, what we're moving from, and then what we're moving into. When we're moving from fall into winter, you're getting this moody kind of dramatic expression of tone and musicality flowing through you. And then coming into this place of almost hibernation, which is winter, a lot of inwardly focused tracks. I love the didgeridoo. At certain seasons, I get that flowing in there, and you can get down to a didgeridoo. I don't know if you know this, but it's fun. It's a great time. And just seeing that expression through people, and maybe someone's never heard of a didgeridoo, and they're like, "I've been to your ecstatic dance, and I don't know what a didgeridoo is." It's possible that you have moved and grooved to a didgeridoo, and seeing that expression through people is so much fun for me. You're just accepting like who, what, everything that is in that moment, and you're just feeling that ecstatic nature. You're feeling that elation. It's dark. We have strobe lights and laser lights and all of the things so that you can really let go. At the end of the night when you're at a nightclub and you're dancing and then the lights come on, you're like, oh my God, stop. What are you doing? So we keep it dark the whole time from beginning
Nice.
to end. And then we close in a circle the same way we began. We like to open with a word or a statement of what brought you here and then how you feel at the end. We kind of open and close the container in the same way. And it's always so magnetic and so powerful at the end. I feel liberated. I feel calm in my body. I feel connected to my body. You don't realize, again, what you're holding on to until you move it. I've had people on the dance floor cry, not that I've seen, but because it's so dark.
Yeah,
But
that's
having
true.
them share that with me later and being like, it was that one song, it struck my heart chords and then opened something up and I'm dancing and all of a sudden I'm crying, but I'm smiling. And it's this flux of emotion that because you're moving, it's that energy in motion. If you freed something up, it's now going to move out of you, which is so rewarding. So rewarding.
Wow. It's amazing. You are connected to so many different types of movements and you're facilitating so many different types of movements. Yoga, the movement is different there compared to ecstatic dancing. Even the movement in Reiki too. It's an energetic movement. They're all healing different parts of the body, the mind, and spirit connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, an energetic connection as well. It's neat like how you have like found yourself like in these different environments and like spaces to heal like through movement.
Yeah.
The other movement that which again is another kind of movement is your retreats and travel. Let's get into that and talk about your retreat in Bali and then maybe moving into the latest one that you're working on.
Sure. My very first ever retreat was in Bali, Indonesia. It was on the northwest side of the island. And when I had went back last year, I was in Uluwatu on the complete opposite side. I had actually met someone whose family is from Umutran, which is where I was in 2019. And that was such a full circle moment for me to, kind of like bring that back and integrate that, so many years later. I stayed at the most idyllic place in Bali the first time around. Every retreat that I've hosted internationally, whether it's been in Bali 2 times, but different locations in Mexico, this one coming up in Italy, they all are home to such unique energies and really special people. I have connected very deeply with each and every one of them. Even the hosts of this one in Italy, I've connected with them on such a different level. It's so heartwarming to be so spiritually connected and energetically connected with every venue, even so many years later. And I remember the first time I did my retreat in 2019, one of my girlfriends came with me and it was just feeling all the feels. And I remember I was sitting the first night with the chef of the retreat, and she was this angel sent from heaven above. She cooked the most amazing food for us. We had 3 meals a day, and I swear we sat around the dinner table for upwards of 6 hours just based on consuming food and having wonderful conversations. That retreat was the only retreat I've ever done 3 meals because we do not need 3 meals on a yoga retreat. That is for sure. The connections that were made during that retreat were just so special. That first night when I was sitting with the chef, she was talking to me and she just had asked me just a very soulful, deep question just about what my why is and my intention around this retreat. I remember just sharing that with her and then immediately breaking down in front of her. I met this woman 4 hours prior. I know nothing of her. I don't know anything. But I just felt this level of comfort that I just broke down in her presence. And I was like, what am I doing here? Why am I crazy to think that I can do this for 7 days? I had all of that self-doubt creep in and she's like, don't doubt yourself. Don't judge yourself. These women have said yes to you. They know you prior to coming here and being here. And not that I needed that in that moment, but I think all of that traveling halfway around the world, having a 11 and a half hour time difference, not being able to connect with my family, taking such a big leap for my first retreat, I think it just all bubbled to the surface. I remember going back to my room and sitting with my girlfriend and just chatting, but nothing about what I had talked to Tanya about, and just sitting there and just being like, you know what? I got this. I'm okay. And it's just facing those fears and those really big obstacles and reminding yourself that you really can do anything that you put your heart and your mind to. And then that week ended up being fabulous. And I've learned something about myself and about others and about facilitating every retreat that I've ever conducted. This year, we're going to Puglia, Italy, which is southern Italy. I am so excited for this one. I've never been to this particular region. I've never been to Italy, and I felt an immediate connection with the venue, with the hosts, and safe and secure and all of the things that you want to feel when you're traveling around the world. It is an eco retreat. They do their best to live off the land and to power everything through solar, and local nonnas from the village cook all of the food. And
Oh, I
I
love
just
that.
love that type of cultural immersion and just being one with the community and with the village itself. I would say since 2019 that I have grown tenfold. And every retreat since then, I have grown. And this year, actually, my girlfriend who came with me the very first time in 2019, she's actually returning back for
Oh, I
this
love
retreat,
that.
which is wonderful. That was a really pleasant surprise. I had no idea. Just out of left field, she's like, I'm coming. I said, yeah, you are. It's a wonderful group of women so far. Last year, I had the opportunity of being a guest facilitator at a retreat, and that was a co-ed retreat. And that was the first time ever that I had led or co-led a co-ed experience. Every experience up to that point has always been women only. Even in my teacher trainings, like time was it to have I had a male come through, and it's just how the cards have been laid, and I'm okay with it because there's so much room for divine feminine energy and that power and that essence of the light and the dark feminine to come together. And so we've decided that this time around we're making this a women's only retreat, and it is shaping up to be a wonderful group of women. They are all magnificent, and we're 2.5, 3 months shy of heading out to Puglia. So we have about 6 spots left. And I just know that whoever fills these spaces, it's going to be exactly what they need and who they need to be with. That is just every yoga teacher training container and every retreat. The women who come in, some of them travel with a friend, some of them travel solo, but they always leave as a unit, some forming closer, tighter bonds than others, some coming in, creating relationships that they didn't know they needed. So it's so beautiful to witness. I know I'll have my moment. I do at every retreat. I think it's just part of the breakdown before the breakthrough. That's just how I navigate, but it's become softer and quieter over the years. But yeah, I'm really grateful for every retreat that I've been part of, facilitated on my own or co-facilitated along the way.
Oh, I love that this latest one is women's only. The divine feminine energy is coming together. How would you describe that energy? How would you describe the divine feminine?
Ooh, that's a good question. The divine feminine is like the ocean. It is soft and it is beautiful. It can also be tumultuous and it can also be roaring with energy. I think to me, that's the divine feminine. And we're all mirrors for each other. We all grow and learn from each other, and we all bring something unique to the table. I think society has done quite a number on putting women against one another. Being able to host these containers and hold space within these containers for women to come together and freely express themselves. And sometimes it takes a day or 2 days or even the full week to trust that you are being safe and divinely guided and held, because maybe, again, you haven't had that in your life up to this
Yeah.
point. But to me, the divine feminine is like the ocean. It is the element of water. It can be frozen solid and stable, or it can be fluid in nature and so open and freeing. It has
Mhm.
this ability to fluctuate and change, just like the phases of the moon and just like
Yeah.
our cycle, how we flow and fluctuate.
We align so closely with the moon too. I love that. Who would you say is your greatest teacher? It can be any practice, but maybe all of the practices.
I think my greatest teacher is my daughter. She has taught me so many things throughout my life, and she continues to teach me so many things in my life now. And so, yeah, she's my greatest teacher.
I remember when my parents were saying to us, me and my brothers, that they learned so much from us. And I remember thinking, I was so humbled because, oh, I didn't think that they learned from us as well. Yeah, it's amazing like what we learn from, yeah, our kids too. It's a special connection. And my last question for today is, how are you honoring the inner child today?
I would say I'm honoring my inner child by slowing down, by continuing to be creative, trusting my intuition in all of the ways that I express my creativity, no matter my state of mind or state of being. I feel that's when I'm the most connected to my inner child. And then anytime I come back to writing, to journaling, to sketching, creating art in any form, whether that be through music, through movement, through all of the other modalities that I practice through energy work. I think that's when I'm most connected to my inner child.
You're just in this state of play, wonder,
Hmm.
curiosity.
Yeah.
Amazing. Sam, I want to thank you so much for coming on my show today and for sharing your insights and your story with us. It was amazing. I really appreciate you. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how the retreat goes too. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm adding Sam's Instagram in the description, so you guys can check that out. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you for having me.
You're amazing.